have made in constructing DC's most iconic sites, from the enslaved men who helped build the Capitol building and the White House, to the architects who left their mark on the capital city. 7 News anchor Carl Willis spoke with Jesse Holland, a journalist and author who has made it his mission to share these untold stories.
Most of us know about the history behind the buildings and the monuments here in the Capitol, but what about the Black history? It sounds like it's all around us.
Especially here on the National Mall, there's so much African-American history that isn't talked about. But it's time to start talking about the real history of the National Mall in Washington, D.C.
Jesse Holland, a journalist and the author of Black Men Built the Capitol, met with me to talk about that history, the slave markets that used to line these manicured grounds, and the slave labor used to build these symbols of our democracy.
As far as our research has shown, the federal government itself didn't own the slaves. But what they did was they would go to slave plantations in Maryland and Virginia. They would rent the slaves from the slave owners. That entire west front of the Capitol today, that used to be a slave village filled with slaves who were used to construct the Capitol.
From the bottom to the top, where the Statue of Freedom stands, an American artist was chosen to design the sculpture and originally had the woman wearing a liberty cap, a symbol of freed slaves.
The person in charge of the contest, the then Secretary of War, was a guy named Jefferson Davis, who goes on to become the president of the Confederacy. He didn't want a freed slave statue to be on top of the U.S. Capitol. While the statue has been modified, what the Statue of Freedom is actually is, to this day, the statue of a freed slave.
And it was an enslaved man named Philip Reed who stepped in and figured out first how to separate the statue's plaster model so that it could be casted, and then how to bronze it once the workers who were hired refused to finish the job without a pay raise.
Imagine this, an African-American slave is the person bronzing the Statue of Freedom going on top of the U.S. Capitol.
Holland says the story that has always stayed with him is the creation of the Tidal Basin.
One of our biggest celebrations is the Cherry Blossom Festival. But the Tidal Basin itself wouldn't be there without the African-American man named Archie Alexander. He actually engineered the walls that hold the Tidal Basin in. But there's never been any acknowledgement of what he did.
Holland says there is still much more of the story that needs to be told. His next work will shed light on Freedmen's Village, the town of freed slaves that was built on the former property of Robert E. Lee, that was later bulldozed to make way for Arlington National Cemetery.
And by learning this history, you'll get a true and accurate picture of who we are as Americans.
Carl Willis.
Today, yesterday, and tomorrow.
7 News.
It's just amazing when you hear the history. You can learn more about this on WJLA.com. Just look for Carl's story. And all month long on 7 News at 5, we're going to celebrate Black History Month on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can find...
Wow. That was a very interesting news clip right there. And that's coming out of a local affiliate that is out of DC. But if I was to watch the local news, I would be able to catch it on my end as well because of how close it is. Now, I had always known that the outline or the blueprint of DC was done by a black man. I believe it was Benjamin Banneker, who, of course, we all know was the one who designed the clock. But I did not know it went even that further. Now, I knew that they said slaves had built, I think, the White House as well, I believe. Or maybe it is the Capitol. I'm not entirely sure. But this is a little bit of new information for me because now I see why they call DC Chocolate City. Or at least it was before it got gentrified. If you was around, like, say, 20 years ago, you'll understand completely what I meant by that. But this is a very important piece of history right there. Of course, that does not get taught in schools, but why would it? It doesn't even get taught on collegiate levels. But then again, why would it? It's just very interesting to me that the structure you're looking at right here on your screen was built on the backs and hands and harsh labor of slaves. Our ancestors. And they said that they were rented. Y'all heard it right there in the clip. They were rented to do this work. And some of them were stopping to do the work beyond the bronzing part because they felt they weren't getting paid or they weren't getting paid. So it was about to be like a half-ass job. and they had to bring other people in to finish it. So what you're looking at right now is a structure that black people built. Black men in particular, because they didn't have the women out there. It was just the men who built this structure that you're looking at right here. Think about it. This is an international landmark. This landmark is not only known here in the States, but it's known around the globe. Like if you could show this picture to anybody around the world of a certain age who knows geography, world geography, when you point this out, they'll be able to tell you what it is and most likely where it is located. If they didn't know anything else, they know what this is. And most of them probably figured out what it was if they didn't know before because of what happened 2 years ago on January 6th. Think about that for a second. A structure that was built by our ancestors, those of us who are FBA. We had some heathen monster savages literally break into our structure. Think about that for a second. They broke into our structure, rubbed and smeared feces on the walls of our structure, broke glass on our structure, vandalized our structure, and one of them got popped in our structure, Ashley Babbitt. Imagine that. And now we see what goes on inside of that structure almost every single day. Built by our ancestors' hands in harsh labor. And when he mentioned the name Jefferson Davis, I knew exactly who he was talking about. Now, peep this little part right here. They said they wanted that to be a statue of a freed slave. And it almost happened, but we all know why it didn't. So what did they do? They put up a statue of a woman and put a crown around the head that was representative of a freed slave or freed slaves. So not only are we represented in this structure right here that you see, but we're right there at the top of the structure. This is why they want our history to be buried. They want it to be buried. They want it to not be heard about. Whenever they talk about American history, we know what they mean. When they say American history, we know that they're talking about white people. That's why it blows my mind, and I'm sure everybody else's, but not in a surprising way, whenever they say, why isn't there a White History Month? Because you don't need one. White history seems to rear its ugly head every single day, even during our month, the shortest month of the year, whether it's a leap year or not. Now, this one I can honestly say I did not know about, and that's the Tidal Basin. In the news clip that you heard, he mentioned about the Cherry Blossom. The Cherry Blossom Festival is an annual festival that is held every spring in DC. It's like a festival. They have parades, they have food, vendors, and all types of stuff. And this is the cherry blossom trees right here. And usually that's where the festival is usually held out, right around here. But this right here is the Tidal Basin. And this was the wall structure right here that he was talking about that man built to keep the water inside. But he never, ever got the acknowledgement that he deserved for building this structure to keep this water in. You know, without that water would overflow. And behind it, that's another famous structure known as the Jefferson Memorial. Yes, they have a whole memorial dedicated to a president of the Confederacy. They even have a highway. It's even a highway in Virginia called Jefferson Davis Highway. I kid you not. So, as you can see, their monuments are still very much well intact. And here's another another famous piece of structure or landmark in DC. This is the Arlington Cemetery. I feel like I'm giving my people a tour right now who've never been to DC before. But this is the Arlington Cemetery. This is where all the people who were in combat, were, you know, veterans in the military of any form. This is where they lay them to rest at. So these are all the tombstones of deceased veterans. Of course, you have the option if you want to be buried there or not. But as you can see, there's a lot of people there. And the reason why I bring that up is because learning something new from this is apparently there was another structure that was built here by another black person, but it got bulldozed to make room for what is now the Arlington Cemetery. And it's way more tombstones on the other side if you move these trees out the way. And you'll see, if you can kind of see in the picture right here, they're kind of scattered behind these trees. So as you can see, black people contributed a lot to the structure of DC. But I thought it was very interesting about that, you know, about the Capitol, especially that statue part, and even the Tidal Basin. Now, the Tidal Basin I really didn't know about, and neither did I know about this one. So I learned something today. I hope y'all learned something today. And if you ever hear someone say, "What have black men built?" you better point them into the direction of either this video or just point them into the direction of black history in general, and you'll see what black men have built. I mean, the fact that this was built with no extra and added technology, no cranes or anything that we would use today to build these structures in a faster time, is one to marvel at. This is why our history is so rich. It's so important, and it needs to be told. And I'm glad that they actually highlighted this, because they could have talked about anything else in black history that we already knew about, but this is that hidden black history right here. So I implore everybody who is watching this video right now to share this with as many people as you possibly can. Again, the people watching this probably already knew about this. Like I said, some of the stuff I didn't know. So it's a learning experience for everyone involved, especially myself. Share this even with your little, the little black boys, especially, because this might actually inspire them to get into being an architect. There's a lot of money to be made in being an architect. That's basically what these black American, these foundational black Americans, I should say, were. They were just architects. Unfortunately, they weren't getting paid for their work. They weren't getting paid for their labor. They were just hired labor to do free work. It was almost like being a volunteer. And these PC individuals got the nerve to say that we didn't build anything and they built it. I want to see them refute this, because they even have images out there of when they were building these structures. The only thing PC people were doing at the time was on the horse with a whip, overseeing this be built. Now it's amazing, because the structure that's built right here is overran and flooded with individuals who look like the people who was on them horses and holding those whips. Go figure.